Hey, welcome back to the Soul Pod. This is Stacy. I know that sometimes you have those moments in life where you feel like your life isn't where you want it to be, where you haven't done the things you want to do, achieve the things you want to do, that you're less than you know you're capable of. And I know that you may want to change, but fear it. Because when we look down that road, it can be frightening, changing, becoming different, even though we know we're not achieving the things that we want to achieve and being the person we want to be, any of these things or all of these things. Carl Jung, the great psychologist and author and philosopher, and you know, Carl Jung, he talked about individuation, this process of becoming our true selves, and that's really what it's about. It's about becoming real, individuation. So what I want to do is I want to dive into the concept of individuation today and talk about how it's vital for us to achieve the things we want to achieve in life in terms of becoming our true selves, our genuine selves. We're all going through life with different life experiences, different adaptations from those life experiences, and they determine who we become. These things come from many different places. They're essentially the shadows that drive us. It's conditioning. It's conditioning. We may grow up to believe many of the things that we're told about ourselves. And we're told things all the time. We don't think about this, but growing up, and especially the early years, the messages that we get are intense, and they basically adjust our programming to tell us this is who we are and how we're supposed to be. I was told growing up by my mother, I was conditioned. So our conditioning is like this. I was conditioned to be a good young man, to be a gentleman, to be strong and smart and kind. Uh, this is conditioning. And then there's the stories we're told, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Most of the stories we're told aren't direct. When they are, they can be painful. If we have somebody that we care about or trust or look up to, maybe a parent who berates us, tells us we're not smart or we're stupid or we're unkind or is abusive in other ways, that's a story that we're getting that's very direct, and it's from somebody that's a trusted person. So, of course, we're going to take that more harshly. We may have any sort of reaction to that, but it's all going to be an adaptation to that event. Even something really small, we can have adaptations to. I had adaptations through my childhood from stories I was told that, even though they weren't told me directly, they were stories that I extrapolated from things that people said about me, that this is what I believe to be about me. We all have that. I had one moment, I grew up poor. We were on public assistance a large portion of my childhood. I had a special needs brother. I had a divorced mother. There were other kids in the neighborhood who had a lot more than we did. And one instance was I got a bicycle for Christmas. I've told this story before. It was a used bicycle, and I was stoked about this bike, stoked about it. And so me and my brother are out riding around on our new bikes. And we run into a couple of neighbor kids, and they got bikes for Christmas too. They got new bikes. And we're like, oh, great, let's go for a ride on our new bikes. And the girl says, oh, those aren't new. Those are old bikes. Ours are new. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm poor. She didn't say it, but that's what I heard. This thing that was really beautiful and wonderful and I was excited about suddenly became a reminder that we were somehow less than these people with money, more money than we had. That's a story I internalized. I carried that story my whole life. And, I had other instances like that too, where just little nudges that, you're from a poor family, you have all these interesting family dynamics, like an severely autistic brother, who, made it challenging to get around and do things because we're different, and he was loud and different and strange. So the judgments I took from that directed my life. I didn't know it, but they affected my adaptations. Now, the weird thing about adaptations is this: you can grow up in the same house with the same siblings, the same parental structure, abuses, non-abuses, whatever it is, and they can make your adaptations. Two people can grow up in the same house, for instance, with an overbearing father who tells them that they're never going to be enough. And one may go on to become a highly educated person, maybe become a doctor, a lawyer, a psychologist. That adaptation is to show him he's wrong. Now, it's an adaptation nonetheless from the abuse. The other sibling might grow up to be an addict because they internalized the abuse so much they believed it. And instead of trying to prove him wrong, they were going to prove him right. See, adaptations are a trip. And when we recognize them, we start to individuate. We start to flip the script. We take the story and we reject it. But we can't do that until we see it. We have to see it first. That's the trick, right? Joseph Campbell, who looked very deeply at this, the shadow self, he said that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. It's a great quote. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. What he meant by that was that when we dare to look at our shadows, the parts of us that drive us, that aren't the true us, but the part that drives us to become who we think we're supposed to be, to work against these things, these stories we've told, these conditionings we've had, and instead make us someone completely different than who we really are, because we're becoming who we are in spite of those things. And what he talks about with the cave you fear to enter is that in looking beneath the cover of this thing that's inside of us, these shadows that drive us, these stories, the story of like, I'm not as good as the other kids. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not talented enough. Whatever it is, the judgment we give ourselves, the judgments we have against ourselves that change the way we are and maybe make us go do that thing to prove them wrong, or go ahead and accept it all and roll over and be a victim to it. The story that says, well, I'm not good enough anyway. Why should I try? Or maybe the story is, oh, they think I'm not good enough. Well, I'll show them. Still an adaptation. We're not being genuine. So you have to enter that cave, and you have to look at those truths. But how does one do that? See, that's the trick. Well, I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to help you with that today. This is not a small topic, and we won't get everything you need from this one video to help you get there, but there will be at least one good tool here to help you start identifying that when you recognize those things that drive you, that make you less genuine, then you become the most adapted, the best, a better version, not the best, but certainly a better version. This is a lifelong journey. We're peeling back a lot of layers. So we're never going to get to perfect, but we can get to better, right? And that's the trick with this. First, I want you to consider, what are your childhood shadows? What are your shadows? And I say childhood because that's where most of us get those. We get those early in life. What are your shadows? Can you identify them? Can you think of things that someone said about you or to you, or that you picked up, that helped you identify who you are in their eyes, even though you may reject it, or maybe told you who you are and you accepted it? Can you identify any of those things? If you can, you're in a really good position. Most of us have to struggle to get there because they're so part of our software, part of our operating system that we run this life by, that we can't get to it. We have to kind of use tools to get to it. So one tool you can use is this. Pay attention to what triggers you. Pay attention to the things that make you think mean thoughts or angry thoughts or frustrated thoughts about people. Look for strong reactions to people. If somebody says something, you say, oh, that person thinks I'm stupid, or oh, they think I can't do this because I'm not smart enough, or they think they're better than me. That's a good one. When you see that, look at it and ask yourself, what story am I telling myself that makes me think that's what they're saying? Or look at things that trigger you in other people, annoying traits, things that trigger a memory in you about something that happened or something about yourself. If you can find something someone does that annoys the crap out of you, odds are there's a possibility there's, flip a coin, potentially something there for you that points to something you need to work on in yourself. Find that thing that triggers. For instance, growing up poor, because I grew up poor, money, anything to do with money makes me so uncomfortable, so very uncomfortable. Uh, I don't like being around people who embrace their poverty, who just like, it's just the way I am. I'm just poor. Because it reminds me of that mentality that I was in when I was young. It reminds me of me. It makes me ashamed of that thing I went through. Even though I may not openly recognize it, I have to, in that moment, stop and say, oh, wow, okay, that's getting to me. Why is it getting to me? Oh, it's getting to me because it reminds me of that shadow, that piece that drives me sometimes where I'm like, well, I'll show you. Look, I got all these things. I got this cool car. I got this cool house. I used to have a cabin in Tahoe. I got this. I got that. To show people that I'm worthy, that I'm just as good as anybody else. Well, that's all bull. You don't have to be as good as anyone else. You have to be the best version of you. The best version of you. And one of the best ways, one of the greatest things you can do to become the best version of you is to recognize your own bullshit, your shadows. Recognize the stories you tell yourself and start rejecting them. This takes work. This takes a ton of work. But the trick is this: recognize those things when people trigger you or something gets to you and ask yourself, what is that? Where does that come from? Now, don't judge it. Don't judge it. As I was explaining a second ago about how things trigger me because of the way I saw myself as a child and, my family dynamic and all those things, it probably sounded like I was being a little judgy. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to be judgy about it. You want to recognize it, observe it, sit with it, just observe it. This goes into ego work too. We're not going to dive into ego work on this. I'm going to do more videos on ego work because it's really vital work if you want to become the best version of you. If you want to keep improving you, ego ego's it's a massive adaptation. It becomes the body part of us that is trying to prove ourselves worthy in the world rather than the soul part of us. What we're talking about is doing the work to strip back those layers of nonsense, of story, of shadow, so that when you get rid of all that, you are closer to the soul part of you, the spirit that is inside of you, the sweetest, kindest, most loving, most wonderful, that part of you that is there, but sometimes it's hard to get to because of all this stuff going on the outside and the shadows and all the layers overlaid us from years and years of experience of things we've either perceived or have flat been said to us, the conditioning, all of those things. So ask yourself, what are the things that trigger you? Think of one thing, write it down, and then ask yourself some questions about it. If you don't find any gold in that, toss it out, write down another one. What triggered you this week? Who ticked you off? Who said something that made you annoyed? And what did they say that got you? What was it that got you? It could be anything. It could be on social media. It could be friends. It could be coworkers. It doesn't really matter. Anywhere at all. It could be just a commercial you see on TV that pisses you off. And you're like, why does that piss me off? Oh, it's a dog food commercial. And it reminded me of my dog. And I never mourned my dog. And I have this story in my head about how it's not fair that my dog died. But that happened when I was 8 years old. And now I'm an adult and I'm carrying that around. And every time I see someone with a dog, I'm annoyed. It could be anything like that, right? See how it flows and it connects. It directs your life. It directs your life because you're subtly making choices based on this adaptation you have, these adaptations you've created throughout your lifetime. So stop and ask yourself, challenge yourself, what are these things that are getting to you? Here's another one I like. I've noticed a propensity for women to say, I'm a strong, independent woman, or a man to say, I'm a self-made man. These are adaptations. These sayings come from adaptations. When someone says, I'm a strong, independent woman, it's probably because she's been told or conditioned to think somehow that she shouldn't be. Like somehow, a woman can't stand on her own. She needs to state that. It's important for her to state that. Self-made man. I'm a self-made man. I'm a self-made man. Well, that's probably because this person has an adaptation that has told them that they're not worthy. They're not good enough. They're not as good. So what do? They go out and be as successful as they could possibly be. And then they make sure to tell people, I'm a self-made man, Now, that's not, I'm not to say, it's not to say that every time you hear one of these phrases, that's what it is. But these are the sorts of phrases. When you catch yourself telling somebody something about you that tells them how good you are, look at that and ask yourself, what is it that I'm really afraid of, that I'm trying to overcome here? What is the thing that makes me uncomfortable in myself, that makes me feel a need to tell people these things about myself? Or is it about my ego that says, let them know you're good, that you're okay, that you're worthy? These things are vital. These things are really vital. And when you do them, you'll change. When you start doing this work, you will change. You will change so much. People will recognize that you're changing. And in fact, many people won't like it. Anytime you do spiritual work, personal growth work, anything that makes you better and stronger and more really alive in yourself, genuine, genuine. When I say genuine, I don't mean a jerk. I mean being genuine because you're comfortable inside your skin. You know the person that you are. When you get there, people will be uncomfortable, and especially those who aren't doing the work. But do it anyway, because there's gold in it. There's gold in it for you. Anais Nin put it like this. She said, the risk is to blossom, to come alive fully, to be what one is meant to be, even if it means standing alone. Even if it means standing alone. There's a great risk in becoming our best selves because there's a giant question there. Will we still have all the same friends? Well, the reality is this: when you become stronger, you may not need some of the same friends. Some of them may fall along the wayside behind you, and never to catch up. That doesn't have anything to do with you. Your work is to be the best you can be. If you struggle with this concept, with the idea of individuation and ego work, and how to find these niches, how to get into yourself deeper, this is a big topic. If you need help with that, I can help. You can use the link in the show notes to set up a free discovery call with me. Use the link, pick a date, we'll talk. If we're a fit, we'll do more work together. But the call's free. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching my channel. If you have any stories you want to share or any observations about this, good, bad, other, please share those in the show notes. I love the conversations that get going between the people who watch this. I enjoy it. I appreciate it. And I thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next video.